Okay, we're live.
So good evening, everybody. This is Dr. Frank Sheboy, Superintendent of Highland Falls, Fort Montgomery Central School District. I'm joined tonight by Dr. Andrea Tejedor, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction Technology, as well as Ann Lawless, President of the Board of Education, and Andrew Riegenbauer from Horizon Medical Group. He is the COVID coordinator, and he's here to join us just to address any questions from Horizon. In addition, we will have some special guests in a little bit who will help hopefully address some of the fears or concerns about our testing program and what it really means for our faculty, staff, and most importantly, our children. So we're going to go through a brief presentation. We've received I would say about 35 questions altogether. I will state from the beginning of this, and I'll restate it when we start to go through the questions. There's a lot of questions, first off, that have been answered in previous town halls. I'm not going to address most of those. There's a lot of questions that are germane specifically to the high school and parking and dances. I'm not going to address those in this forum. Ms. Brand will communicate the responses to those, as well as some timely things about PSATs to families that need that information in the coming days and weeks. So I hope everybody will indulge me in that, but my goal today was to speak mostly about our testing and to address a few questions about vaccines, which were relayed to the district. So if you watch any of our town halls or listen to any of our board meetings since July, you will recall that we've talked and operated from 4 key or core principles. 1, to work to ensure the health, safety of all of our members of our learning community, our faculty, our staff, our children. Secondly, to work to ensure a high quality instruction program regardless of the delivery method. So whether we're face-to-face brick and mortar, whether we're hybrid, whether we are full virtual, to deliver a high quality instructional program. I will tell you, we do believe that instruction is best served with our children in our buildings, and we are working tirelessly to get to that level. Third, we learned this lesson valuably again in November, to be flexible and responsive to changing circumstances. And lastly, but certainly not least, to plan for progress, not perfection, throughout everything that we have done. Since March of last year, I just want to remind everybody, we have made all of our decisions based on the direction and guidance of New York State and Governor Cuomo, the New York State Education Department and the New York State Department of Health, the Orange County Department of Health, Commissioner Gelman, as well as Dr. Gergely, the district's physician. In regards to athletic questions, I won't be addressing many questions about athletics. We are scheduled to begin winter season for low-risk sports on January 19th. We are still scheduled for that. But we've taken our direction from the New York State Public High School Athletic Association, Section 9, and the OCIAA. The district has made great strides and added significant resources and put in place protocols and standards. Even our guests this evening had to go through our screening protocol that were required by New York State as part of our reopening plan. We are all in this together. I have stated over and over again that this is not something that the district is going to be able to control by itself. Our goal is to reopen. Everybody's goal needs to be that we stay open. That means when we do that COVID screening, it is done with fidelity, that our families and our faculty and staff are taking their child or their own temperature every day. That we're answering those questions accurately, honestly, and with fidelity every day. That if somebody isn't feeling well, we keep them home. And if somebody's waiting for the results of a test, of a COVID test, don't come into our system until you have those results. We found very rapidly in November that 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 cases could shut down our high school and render it impossible for us to do what we think we should be doing best, instructing within the halls. So we want to just remind everybody, we've put in place so many things, but we as a school district can't do this on our own. We need our families to partner with us, and that means taking that COVID screening very seriously every day. Even though you don't have to report every day, taking the screening every day. So we sent out a letter last Friday that had some information regarding an overview of our testing plan should a designation of yellow, orange, or red be issued for the district. The designation will be communicated to all parents, guardians, and students, as well as faculty and staff. Parents and guardians now will be asked to complete a Google form consenting to the testing of their child or children. That no student would be tested without a consent form and direct communication with the parents and guardians. And that if the number of testing consent forms returned exceeds the number needed for our zone designation, 20% for yellow and orange, 30% for red, a building or a district may be able to remain open for hybrid instruction. It's important, and I'm going to stress this throughout this presentation. If we do not have enough consent forms, we will not be able to remain open, presuming we open. Schools would need to pivot to fully remote. So currently, the Highland Falls Intermediate School, which is in the village of Highland Falls, falls in a yellow zone. We will be testing in the first 2 weeks, presuming we have enough consent. If we don't get enough consent, we would need to return to fully remote instruction after the first 2 weeks. We would not be able to legally remain open. So we have Horizon Family Medical Group here. We have Andrew, we have Marlena, and we have Cindy. And they are going to be with us to conduct all on-site testing. They are experts in this. They do this thousands of times a week. And we also wanted to make sure that we as a district preserved the relationship between our school nurses and our children. Our school health offices are not just places where our children go when they're ill. Sometimes they go when they need a meal, and sometimes they go when they're emotionally not able to go to class. Sometimes they go just to escape. What we didn't want to do was put a barrier between that beautiful, wonderful, and powerful relationship between our school nurses and our children. Our school nurses will be on site at the testing sites all the time that we're testing to reassure our children, to escort them from the gathering area and back to the testing area and back, but our nurses are not doing it. So at this time, I would love to ask both Cindy and Marlena to come, and I'd like to demonstrate this particular test. This is, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, this is the Abbott Biodax Now Rapid Antigen Test.
Correct.
It is a 15-minute result, and it is non-invasive. This is not the one that's going to scratch the back of my brain, right? This
Correct.
is the non-invasive one. This is also not a PCR test.
Correct.
Okay. PCR would take anywhere between 48 and 120 hours, 2 to 5 days, give or take?
Yeah, give or take, it would be about two or three days.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So what are we going to do here? We have, this is the card.
want to see the card.
Yeah. Do you want to just put it in front of the camera? Because I don't want to touch it in case it's sanitary. Because you're wearing gloves, I'm not. So this is the card, and this is the swab. The swabs. So into the card, you insert the swab and some reagent.
Yes. So
Okay,
we're gonna,
a reagent basically is a chemical that reacts with something and gives a result. I'll call it the ECT, the early COVID test, as opposed to the EPT that some of us would probably be aware of from other circumstances. So,
all we have to do is put the reagent in that top hole. And then once she swabs, the swab goes into this bottom hole all the way up to the top. We circle it and then we close it, and it sits for 15 minutes and our result comes right on the top.
okay. So I guess I'm up.
You're up. You're up.
Okay, so hopefully everybody can see.
All right, it's gonna be a little tickle. And we do both nostrils. All right, that's it.
That's it?
That's it.
That's it.
It goes into the card. Which I don't have the reagent, but just so you can see it, we can go ahead and put it in.
We go right into the card here.
Okay.
We will be fine. Take it
I'm
out.
gonna put it back up.
No, it stays in.
I see that.
Okay.
And then we just close it and then we just wait.
So you'll let me in with 15 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Then we'll call you back. So again, Horizon Medical is going to be conducting all of our insight testing. Testing of students is going to be scheduled so as The required percentage of students and staff would be tested on a biweekly basis in order to meet the requirements. Families would be notified that their child has been selected if they've given consent. We've had a couple questions about, how are we going to choose students? I'll go through that as part of the FAQs. But our goal would be to notify people a couple days ahead. And the reason for that is twofold. Some parents might want to be there with their child. That's okay. That is absolutely okay. But the more important reason is we need our families to be available in the hopefully unlikely occurrence that somebody tests positive. Because if somebody tests positive, that child would need to go home. Any of their siblings in other buildings within the district would need to go home. So if there is a positive, Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, we would do another swab, another one of these rapid antigen tests. I think he said we'd also do a PCR test to confirm that just in case.
Yep, exactly.
As a precaution, because I know that there's some concern about the accuracy of these. They're fairly accurate. 2 tests would be much more accurate, and a PCR to confirm would guarantee whatever the result is.
Pretty much, yes.
Good, thank you. That's why I have Andrew here. On the day of testing, at the beginning of the school day, our children who are selected for testing would be directed to a gathering area. We would know who they are. We'd have our list. We'd meet them at the door. We would seat them in the gathering area that would allow for enhanced social distancing. Now, I say enhanced because we all know that 6 feet is what we talk about. Our goal would be 12 to 18 feet. Because if we have a student who is positive, what we don't want to do is take out that whole testing group as a close contact. So if we build that 12 to 18 feet, we can work around that. Should we have hopefully we have none, but should we have a student who is testing positive? We've had a couple questions from families that say, well, if I'm going to bring my student, can I just have them wait in the car with me until such a time? Absolutely. Parking's tough at the HFIS and the Ford School if we ever need to test there, but absolutely. We want our children, we want our family to be comfortable with this. And as I've already said, the test will be administered by Horizon personnel. Our school nurses will physically be there. They'll escort our students to the mobile testing site. They'll support them throughout the process. Students after this test, I think that took like 12 seconds. I'm not sure. We're going to do it in groups of 5. So 12 times 5 is 60. That's about a minute. But let's just figure, because they'll probably be taking a temperature and a pulse ox, which is that little thing that they put on the finger of the child or an adult, just to make sure that that child is healthy. You will have already screened your child, so we know that their temperature is going to be fine anyway. But they'll do that quick screening. So my guess is maybe 1 to 2 minutes per child, groups of 5. They get swabbed. They go back to the gathering spot where they sit in their original seat. And then we wait 15 minutes. We'll know what's going to happen to that child. If a student tests negative, he or she goes back to their instructional day, back to their class, and a phone call may be made depending on which building. I know that the relationships between our nurses and our families is so positive. Our nurses have said, we will do our best to call every day. But that notwithstanding, a letter from the district would be sent home to families informing them of that negative result. If a child tests positive, the child would be escorted to the isolation room. They would have that second swab first. They'd have that PCR test, and they would be escorted to the isolation room. Their parent or guardian would be contacted by the school nurse, and the child would absolutely need to be picked up as soon as possible. So again, that parent who wants to be there with their child and wants to be in the parking lot, that's fine. They could take them directly home. As I've stated, any siblings in any school building would also need to be picked up as well, because he or she would be a close contact with somebody who had tested positive now. And it is extremely important. And this is not something new to this town hall. This is something we've been saying since July. It is extremely important that families be able to pick up their child immediately Hopefully everybody has heeded what we've asked them to do and updated their emergency contacts. As I said, we're all in this together. As I've stated, the Highland Falls Intermediate School is currently in an area that is designated as yellow. As I've stated, if we do not have sufficient consent to tests, we would be required to return to a virtual-only instructional model after 2 weeks. I want to just have Dr. Tejedor spend a couple minutes talking about our instruction, talking about where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. So, Dr. T.
Thank you, Dr. Shiboy. It's a pleasure to be here this evening to address the community. So our students at this point, we're planning to open our doors for the hybrid model on January 19th. That week of January 19th is the close of the second quarter. So students who previously elected to be a part of the hybrid model will come to school. Those that previously elected to be a part of the virtual model will continue to be virtual. The new marking period begins on January 25th. We did send out a survey, a student opt-out of in-person instruction survey for parents to complete. And the next instructional period that we're looking at for opting out of in-person instruction is from January 25th until April 5th of 2021. I apologize for that.
We're still switching the calendar.
Yeah,
That's it.
exactly. So this form gave the parents an opportunity to opt their child out of in-person instruction to participate in the remote learning experience. The survey closed on January 8th, and transportation will be scheduled for all students attending the hybrid model, even if parents are driving their child to school. So transportation will be scheduled for everyone. Then on January 25th, we'll continue with our hybrid learning schedule. Students attend based on a cohort assignment. Students were either assigned to a maroon or gold cohort. The maroon cohort students meet Monday and Tuesday at school. They're virtual Thursday and Friday. And the gold cohort students are the reverse of that, where they will be virtual on Mondays and Tuesdays, and then present in school on Thursday and Friday. Wednesdays are asynchronous for all of our students. The virtual learning schedule, there is no change to that schedule for our students in 6th through 12th grade. That is consistent with our hybrid learning schedule. And our K-5 schedules are communicated by our buildings as they're slightly unique based on the grade level. Again, our classroom and school environment, this is what we've been doing all along as we've been planning to have students in school, to keep our class sizes small, maintain social distancing in our hybrid model, requiring all of our students to wear face coverings, building in mask breaks throughout the day, scheduled, and the teachers using discretion as well, and during our meals. When and where it's possible, minimize student movement throughout the school building. We've assigned anchor classrooms for our students, and that's where we want them to spend most of their day to minimize the movement throughout the buildings. Encourage frequent hand washing, emphasize and teach good personal hygiene. We've been fortunate to have our nurses involved with that process, and then encouraging students to keep their spaces clean and to take personal responsibility for their personal hygiene. Grades count, talk about homework, assignments, tests, and quizzes, and then attendance counts as well, regardless of the instructional model.
Yeah, and one thing we've been stressing, we only have a vaccine now for about 6 weeks that's been approved on emergency authorization. So since March, what we've been working on are these non-pharmaceutical interventions, ways that we can keep each other safe. Regardless of the vaccine, we're going to keep using those things. And that's important for us all to remember. And I'll address a couple of questions that I know have come in about those. But realistically, that's what we have to do. I mean, this is currently a vaccine that has not even been approved yet for a pediatric environment. So we're going to have to keep these things, face covers, small class sizes, minimizing student movement, hand washing, all the things. Yeah, I hope we've been washing our hands all along, but COVID reinforced the importance of that. So as Dr. Taylor said, we are still planning on a return to our hybrid instructional program on January 19th. The only thing that would stop that, and I'll address a couple of questions on that, is if the governor does not allow us to open our school. How well we remain open, or how long, is certainly dependent on how well we all work on that screening that we talked about. We will tentatively begin surveillance testing. This is not diagnostic testing. We are not a medical practice, but surveillance testing of our students, faculty, and staff at the HFIS, only at the intermediate school, on January 21st. We tentatively plan to test on the following schedule. Again, this was in our letter. There is a slight change here. I made a math error, which I was a social studies teacher. So those of our students, even Dr. Sheboy does make math errors occasionally. January 21st, we will test 20% of our gold cohort students and 10% of our faculty and staff. January 25th, we will test 20% of our maroon cohort students and 10% of our faculty and staff. That's where the magic question comes in. Again, this was listed as 10%, but that would not have given us our total of 20%. In order to meet the requirements, we need to test 20% of the cohort. Based on the current numbers of the cohorts, this would mean that we would be testing approximately 25 students each day on the 21st and the 25th. We're not talking great numbers, but it is imperative that we get the consent even to test those small numbers. Hopefully, we have a positivity rate that is lower than that of our region, and therefore we wouldn't have to test right away. Hopefully, the governor does not say that all of the state and the 36 or 37 counties that currently have positivity rates in the vicinity of 9% are all orange. But if that happens, we would implement our testing program for the rest of the district. I think I just went through most of this, so, yeah.
Dr. Sheboy, can I just clarify one thing?
Please.
I did have a question come in. A parent asked a question. I misspoke. It said that, I said that all students would be bused. What I meant was all students who are eligible for busing.
Correct.
If your student was a walker previously, that student would still be a walker. But if students are eligible for busing, they would continue to be eligible busing, and we'd be scheduling transportation for them.
Yeah, that's correct. And,
Yeah.
and again, the busing zone is 0.7 miles.
Yes.
So, yep.
Yeah, thank you.
So based on the outcome of this initial round of testing, if the positivity rate is lower than the positivity rate in the yellow zone, then testing may be discontinued. If the positivity rate of HFIS exceeds the 7-day rolling average positivity rate in the yellow zone, then we would have to continue to test, and we would test again February 4th, February 8th, we would test 20% of the students in each of the cohorts, and then 10% of faculty and staff again. Other information. O'Neill and the Fort are not in designated yellow, orange, or red zones. Plans for those schools is simply proactive. Other information, I want to thank Dr. Theodore for, again, updating our website. We've put a new page on COVID response. We have continued and kept up the old information, the old FAQs, the old town halls. If anybody wants to return to those, it's riveting TV, I promise. But there is a link there for the consent form in both English and Spanish on that COVID-19 response page. So now it's time for some Q&A.
Yes.
So Dr. Theodore, are most of these questions about testing and stuff like that, or are they all about instruction and I'm off the hook?
You are on for, I would say, all of it.
Okay, so, and I'll invite Andrew to jump in Again, he's from Horizon Medical. He is their COVID coordinator. So I imagine we got a couple more minutes on my test.
We got to do 40 seconds.
40 seconds to find out if I'm COVID positive, and we would have to quarantine these 5 people in this room as a congregate setting. Thank you, Dr. Gelb. But, so you want to read the questions and then I'll answer them? Because I don't really have access to them.
Right? So the first question, if we show proof that our kids have COVID antibodies, can they get exempt from nasal swab testing?
So no, the Department of Health, both on the state level and the county level, does not allow for such exemption from the testing requirements. So regardless of antibodies, they would still have to test. I heard a buzz.
Yes.
So you want to come around and will you be able to show the results?
Yes,
Or,
we can show the results.
because I don't even know what it looks like. First off, before we embarrass me, was it positive or negative?
We are negative.
I am negative, which is a good thing in this type.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you, I was a little worried. So
So
can I hold it?
yeah, absolutely.
So what am I looking at as I'm trying to show this? And Dr. Taylor, can you see it on the screen? I don't know if you could or not. No, because I'm still.
Great, but it's a little dark.
Okay, so one line there is negative, and that's good.
Yep.
2 lines would have been positive, and I'm 1 line.
You're welcome.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so again, going back to that, the Department of Health on the state and county level does not allow that type of exemption from this testing.
What are our benchmarks for returning to full 5 days a week schooling?
Yeah, so we actually don't have benchmarks for that. We are under the guidance of the New York State Education Department and Department of Health. Social distancing is required as long as we are socially distanced and required to socially distance. We do not have space to bring all of our children and faculty, well, our faculty's here, but our children in every day. So we need COVID to be gone. So I don't have a benchmark per se.
Is there a plan for mandated vaccines for teachers?
So I don't know any superintendent or any school board that would mandate a vaccine that has been approved under an emergency authorization. I wouldn't, because this is a vaccine that has been approved under an emergency authorization. Now, while I think it's safe, and while I'm in group B, 1B, and while I did get the vaccine because I'm in 1B, I wouldn't mandate other people to do that. If the governor, after the emergency authorization, or the New York State Department of Health mandates it, then we would work with our faculty and staff to roll that out. So I know a lot of people are very interested in getting our kids back, so they're very interested in pursuing the vaccine on their own.
Awesome. If someone has previously tested positive, they can continue to test positive for 90 days. Can you suggest or recommend that anyone that has been positive to not sign up to consent for testing?
Yeah, so I'm not a doctor. I am, but I'm not that kind of doctor. And what I would say is that I would hope anybody would ask their pediatrician about their child. I'm not going to make medical decisions. As I've said, we've taken advice and guidance and direction from Orange County Department of Health and New York State Department of Health. I'm not gonna jump in on who should assent or consent. But I would hope that they would have a conversation with their physician. If that's true,
Yeah.
that they would have a propensity towards positive, then that could raise our numbers. But that's truly a decision that a family would have to make. Andrew, did I misspeak?
No, there is that the questioner was correct, that there is a propensity towards there still being positive results. The key in that is being asymptomatic after you've gone through the quarantine period, and then you could still continue to test positive. So a doctor's note would be important in that circumstance.
So also, what percentage of positive do we need to stay under in order to remain open?
So that's a really challenging question, because while I appreciate all the work that Governor Cuomo has done for the last 10 months, There are sometimes things that he's putting out in PowerPoints that never make it into executive orders. And that, the lack of direction and has caused confusion. So what I would say is, when we open on January 19th, and our school right now, the Highland Falls Intermediate School, is in the yellow zone. If we have enough consent to continue the testing as required for that zone designation, we can remain open. The governor originally said 9% schools would close. The governor has more recently said schools should be open. We believe that. We actually believe that our schools are safer than most other places. They're certainly safer than maybe a hospital, than most public places, even though they're not public by the same definition. The governor's pulled away from the 9%. He's on the microcluster zone. He's kind of pulling away from the microcluster zone, but as long as we're testing as per the requirements for the zone designation that we are under, we could remain open for our hybrid instruction.
All right. If we receive notification, or if a family receives a notification that their child is on the list to be tested, since we will be notified a day or two in advance, can we bring them to a rapid testing location of our choice and send them to school with the results?
See, the problem is that it creates a gap in our notification. We would ask that they have them tested here, because then our notification requirement, our timeline is preserved for our reporting. Because we, in addition to doing this just to say open, we also have to report it to the New York State COVID dashboard. We report every day to the New York State COVID dashboard. Our personnel assistant, Yvette Mogg, is doing a great job managing that for us. We need that information. To the extent that's practicable, we need that information to be coming from one source. And that's why we're offering this on-site through the partnership of Horizon Family Medical.
So several parents have asked if they can accompany the child for pre-testing. And can they wait in the car and accompany them to be tested and then wait for the test results in a vehicle outside of school?
Absolutely. And I think we kind of alluded to that during the PowerPoint. We understand that some families whose young kids, if you got tested at the beginning of COVID and they shoved that, I don't know if you can see, they shoved that swab, it felt like they were scratching your brain. It was not just in your nostril. Today was the first time I had a COVID test. I was never tested before. I didn't want to know, actually, because I didn't want somebody to tell me I couldn't come to work for 2 weeks. But I also felt good. And my wife gets tested twice a week at the nursing home she works at, so that's a long story, but she's my canary in the coal mine, so everything's good. I want our children and our family to be comfortable with what we're doing. If it increases their level of comfort and increases the level of support for this program so that we can remain open, by all means, absolutely.
Is there a saliva test option that we would be able to consider for Fort Montgomery Elementary School students under the same pretenses with parents accompanying the children?
Yes.
I mean, we're not testing at Fort Montgomery right now.
Right. So
that's,
I know that that's a proactive type of question, but I would say that currently the test that we are able to offer is this test. I know that, that there are pool tests and things such as that, the saliva test. We don't have the ability right now with our partnership with Horizon to handle that type of test. I know that prior to about, what was that? I can't see the clock, 30 minutes ago, that I had a lot of fear of what this test was. But currently we do not have a plan for a different type of test for our children.
So is there a plan to do COVID antibody testing showing those who have immunity to COVID for both teachers and students? And if so, would it be possible to create a pod of immune teachers with immune students, allowing them to go back full time?
So the district is not planning on doing antibody testing. It's actually not within our purview.
It's a blood test.
Yeah, I mean, it is a little bit more invasive. It is not something that we were going to do for students or for teachers. A pod of immune teachers and immune students. I don't know that such a thing is going to exist. No matter what vaccine is out there, people who have reflected the antibodies through their blood test. I did have an antibody test. I never had a COVID test. There is differing information, and Andrew can correct me, as Dara said, differing information on how long those antibodies are present in your system and whether or not, even if you had them, you could pass on COVID. So, thank you. See, I am maybe a doctor, but not that kind of doctor. So the concept of immune teachers, even vaccinated doesn't mean 100% immune. Remember that the Pfizer vaccine has approximately a 95% effective rate, and the Moderna approximately 94.1% effective rate. So even if somebody is fully vaccinated and that the 2 weeks have passed to make sure that their immunity is up, how do I know which one is in the 5 to 5.9%? So that's why the question is about, when will we be back to normal where all of our kids will go to school every day and everything will be back to normal? I could never answer. I can't. So, but I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So will we really go back to the building in January? One writer indicated that they find it very hard to believe that we will finally go back with all cases being at an all-time high.
Yep. And I agree, and I understand that concern, and I will tell you that the governor and Frank Sheboy wants our kids back in school, and most of our parents want our kids back in school. If any individual family feels that they want to keep their child virtually, we sent the survey out. I'm sure that people could still, if they reached out to their principal and said, look, I'm really questioning this, really want to stay virtual, that's fine. We won't question that. But we have spent time, effort, energy, money, resources, putting together protocols and systems to make our schools safe. I believe our schools are not reflective of the positivity rates of the Mid-Hudson region. So we're opening in January unless the governor says we can't. And that's why when I'm at the end of this presentation, I'm probably going to say something about that COVID screening form and being, doing it with fidelity. Again, I'm going to stress that. Folks, I'm looking right in the camera now. Folks, we have to keep our kids safe. We have to do that screening, take their temperature. If they've got a cough, it's not seasonal allergies. I'm telling you right now, I have 2 Labrador retrievers at home and I always have a scratchy throat. Every day I take my temperature and every day I make sure that what I have is not a symptom of COVID-19. I would ask, when in doubt, keep them out. That's what we have to do in order to stay open. Yes, we are really going back in our buildings in January. How long we stay is not up to me. It is up to everybody in our school community doing what they need to do.
Okay. So one question has come in about in-person and hybrid learning. If someone opts for in-person, then decides to go remote, what, if anything, changes?
That's like an instructional question, Coach. So if somebody signs up for in-person and then they want to go remote, we will move them to remote. They can't do the other because we're working on schedules for transportation, for class cohorts. We can't do the other. We can't go from virtual academy to hybrid or in person during that window, but you can go the other way. So if somebody said, I started my child, just worried, they can absolutely make that decision. That was your question, Coach.
Well, I figured we're sharing.
No.
If someone is attending virtual and attending extracurricular activities, do they have to sign consent form for testing?
So the guidance and the requirements are for those people attending instruction in person, not extracurriculars or sports or anything like that.
So then if our students have selected virtual instruction and they're part of our virtual academy, they do not have to complete the consent form.
That is correct. And whether they completed it or not, they would not count it towards our 20%.
Okay.
For any of the buildings, period. So
If someone selects hybrid but is going virtual for a particular day, is he or she removed from random testing list, or will that student have to go to school to test if selected?
So does that, I'm not sure I understand the question.
I think that question is from our high school's perspective, because our high school students can still attend their remote classes if they're not feeling well for a day and they need to stay home. They can join their class from a remote setting.
Oh, so like if they were absent, but
Yes.
but attended.
But attend.
Okay,
Yeah.
so-
They're physically absent.
And they had
Still-
consented?
Yes.
So if they had consented and they were absent that day, we're not, if I need 24 students, I'm not selecting 24, trust me. I'm selecting 26 or 27 because there is an attrition rate on any given day. You have kids absent. But what I don't want to do is at the end of my testing cycle, be at 19% and having not met the requirement and therefore having to test again just because I didn't meet my requirement, or pivoting to full remote because I didn't meet my test requirement. So my hope is that that child and that child's family would say, you know what? I was selected. I can't be there that day. Put me in the next time and we'll have somebody else.
Awesome.
Yep.
All right. I would like to know if the test being conducted is an antigen test or PCR, how quickly the results will be given, in what form?
Yeah,
Text, phone call, email?
thank you. We addressed that in our letter.
We did.
We also addressed that already today, but this is a rapid antigen test. It is not a PCR test. It is ready in about 15 minutes. It is not ready in 2 or 3 days. The positives, God forbid, positives would get a phone call from the nurse saying, please come get your child. They've now tested positive for COVID-19. Negatives, to the extent that we can, we will call, but we're also going to send a form letter.
The positives would also get a call from a medical provider at Horizon to explain what the positive means.
Perfect. So again, that's why we have Andrew here, because I will miss things, but they'll also get a call. So they get a call from Ms. Wetzel, Ms. Figuera, or Ms. Muscatella, and also positive would get a call from somebody from Horizon. Perfect. Thank you.
Great. How many students, faculty, and staff are in that intermediate school building? And is the percentage of parents submitting consent forms for the students that are hybrid? In other words, are the students that are in the remote academy counted in that percentage?
Yeah. So we have approximately 307 students at the Highland Falls Intermediate School. Based on the current people who have selected remote only for January 21st, inclusive of January 21st and January 25th, we have approximately 100 people currently. Now it's 78, I think, for the next market period. And just to err on the side of caution, that's probably the number I'm going to go with, 78. So if I've got 308, just because I can do the subtraction from an 8 to an 8 much easier, 308 minus 78 is approximately 230 students who will attend personally. 10% of 230 is 23, so 20% is 46. So we would need to test approximately, to hit our 20%, 50 students in that first 2 weeks. 25 on that Thursday, 25 on the following Monday. So 25 on the 21st, 25 on the 25th. Faculty and staff is in the vicinity, because remember, we're talking teachers, teacher aides, monitors, clerical administrators, custodians, as well as grounds people assigned to that building or other people assigned to that building. We know that, we have Keith and Stefan in our tech. They're primarily assigned to the high school. So they would count in the high school's faculty and staff members. But let's just for laughs say that that number is approximately 60. Faculty, staff, total. Teachers, teacher aides and monitors, clerical, administrators, custodial workers, everybody. So 60 would be approximately 12 people who would need to be tested on the 21st and the 25th, 6 each day, so that we would hit our 20% benchmark. Again, we'd probably test 7, we got 14, so that way we would have no issue.
Combined.
Correct, yep.
And how is the random selection to be tested, conducted?
Great question. I love Random. Random.org is a page that I've used. I used it in my dissertation to figure out distribution. So what we would do is once we have our pool of consent, which is a term that we have been using to describe and define the people who have said, yes, I agree, my child can be tested. Once we have that, then we would randomize those students in that list and take the number that we need. So if we've got the gold cohort, let's presume for laughs that I've got 50 people from the gold cohort. I would randomize those and I would take the first 25 and I would have them tested on the 21st. I would then do the same thing for my maroon cohort. I would randomize whatever that number is, take the number that I need, 25-ish, right? And I would have them assessed or tested on the 25th. If our positivity rate is lower than what, than the region, than the zone designated area, Highland Falls, then we would be free from testing unless we went into a designation later on. If it is higher, then we would have to pull that next group. But this is where it becomes an issue. If I get 30% consent and I need to retest or I need to test again, I can't take that first 20% and throw them back in the bucket. That does not work. It's also not in alignment with the DOH guidelines. We would not have a sufficient number for that second tier of tests, and we would have to shift to pure virtual.
All right, have you heard any information about if vaccinated students will be exempt from quarantine requirements if they are in a class with someone who tests positive?
So no. No, meaning I have heard the information, and the answer is no. They would not be exempted. And the reason is simple. First off, students aren't going to be vaccinated, right? Because this is not a pediatric vaccine. So if students are in a congregate setting, a classroom is a congregate setting, a school bus is a congregate setting, then they would be quarantined just like we had prior to our holiday pause. But let's talk faculty, right? The fact that an individual has been vaccinated does not necessarily mean that that individual, you line up 100 people, based on the statistics for the clinical trials, 5 of those people are not immune to COVID-19. Which ones? I don't know. So both the New York State Department of Health and the Orange County Department of Health have indicated that those individuals, even if they've been fully vaccinated and even if the wait time, approximately 2 weeks wait time, it has passed, those individuals would still have to quarantine as if they had not been vaccinated. Now, my guess is once we hit a tipping point in the vaccines, and we all know that really young children are less likely to present symptoms. Notice I did not say to test positive, I did not say to have COVID or to carry COVID, but less likely to exhibit symptoms. That doesn't mean there aren't any. So we're talking statistics. High school age children and middle school age children are, again, less likely than adults, but they do exhibit symptoms. We all know children in that age group who've exhibited symptoms. But adults, I'm not a spring chicken anymore. That's the reason why, we are being very cautious with everything, because our children interact not only in our schools, but in their homes with people who aren't 3 to 17 years old.
So if a teacher is vaccinated and has a student in class who tests positive for COVID-19, will that teacher be required to quarantine for 14 days?
Same answer.
Yeah.
Yep, same exact answer. And again, I'll just go back to, everybody has to get medical advice from their primary care physician, right? But this is not, at its current state, this is not a pediatric vaccine. It is not undergone, the stringent clinical trials that, it has for older people, myself included. So children probably won't be vaccinated for some time. I hear the question, was the state going to require children to be vaccinated? I don't know. And if they do, then we would communicate that. That would be through the Department of Health, not through the Department of Craig Sheboy.
Has the substitute teacher list grown, and how many substitute teachers do we have?
Yeah, so thank you. I appreciate that. If those of you who did watch our town halls previously, remember we had our green and our yellow and our red, and our substitutes were always in the red or the yellow. The simple answer is yes. Our substitute list has grown. Since we began doing that, we brought on about 10 people. We do a monthly recruitment, monthly orientation for our substitutes. We've met some great subs. The same, remember, it's hard to keep people when we're not working. But we've got, give or take, in any year, 50 or 60 substitute teachers, plus a handful of teacher aides, clerical, et cetera, custodial workers. 50 or 60 teachers, and we're in that zone right now. The problem comes not that how many people are on our list, it's how many people answer the call to substitute on a given day. We'll all look back at in our time machine back to that second week of November after we opened at O'Neill. I couldn't stay open because of the contact tracing indicating 160 odd students and 23 faculty members. Couldn't stay open and couldn't get 23 people to come in on those days. We put the calls out. So if anybody wants a substitute, just let us know. Yvette.Maag, M-A-A-G, at HFFMCSD.org. She'll put you on the list. She'll tell you, sign up to OLAS, but we'll get you on the list for an orientation.
Absolutely. So there is one question that came in during our conversation.
Perfect.
Down at the end, and it has to do with the zone designation. How come the intermediate school is in the yellow zone when this writer heard it was the high school that tested positive for the virus?
So schools don't test. I mean, a school doesn't test positive. It is where the positivity rate is within a community. I would like to tell everybody that I understand the magic of the man behind the curtain, but I don't. I'm not an epidemiologist. I will say again, I'm not a doctor, not that kind of doctor. But I will say that the village of Highland Falls had a high positivity rate that put it in the yellow zone. I have heard since then from a lot of people, oh, Highland Falls is going off the list. It hasn't. If people want to go and check, all you have to do is Google New York State microcluster zones. That's me typing. And if you type in an address, 52 Mountain Avenue, school address for Highland Falls Intermediate School, it'll say this school is in a designated yellow zone. If you type in 21 Morgan Road, the address of James O'Neill High School, Professor O'Neill's wonderful gift to our district, it will say it is not currently in a zone. We get informed by the Department of Health, or actually the Office of Counsel of the Governor is really how that comes out. Interesting. That we are in a zone. We don't determine the zone. We are told we're in a zone, and that then impels us or forces us to make decisions about, testing and things such as that.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Sheboy. Those are all the questions that came in related to testing. I know you mentioned earlier that there were other questions, but we'll be addressing those on a school-by-school basis.
Yeah, again, I do want to re-invite people to go back to our previous town halls, go back to our previous FAQs, because a lot of the questions that came in early were very specific to one building or another. I wanted to spend today talking about testing. Ms. Brand will address the questions about parking and prom and graduation in the coming days, weeks, and months as in due time for those things. We want to make sure that our families have the information. But right now, our priority is on getting our schools open, January 19th, and keeping them open regardless of a zone designation should it come. I do want to restate a couple things. We are all in this together. We all need to take that COVID screening every day with fidelity. If somebody is not well, don't come to school, don't come to work. If somebody went for a test because somebody in there, they were with somebody and they tested positive and they said, you know what? That's a preventative measure. I'm just going to go get a test. Do not come to school or to work while you wait for that test. If you went for a PCR test, do not come to school while you wait for that. Remember, you can be asymptomatic and carry. So if I'm just going to go and get that just in case. We know how rapidly that can shut down our schools. Every school district in Orange County dealt with that in the fall. Every one of them. So we've done everything that we can to get ready to reopen. We got ready to open. We cannot do it ourselves to stay open. I can't. Get up every morning, have my coffee, pet the dogs, take my temperature, do my COVID screening. That's part of my daily routine. I do it before I brush my teeth, not as an afterthought. I've probably forgotten to brush my teeth in the past year more often than I've forgotten to do my COVID screening. Wear masks so no one knows. And I want to ask people, just if you don't want to consent to your child, that is your decision. But if you have questions, reach out to your school nurse. If you're unsure, remember, Horizon Family is here as a partner with us. They invite not families, we don't want 40 people coming, but they invite a parent or guardian to be there with their child. Our nurses will be there with their children. That's what they do. Our consent numbers, as of today, are still fairly low, right, Dr.
Very low.
We have not hit the threshold of 20%.
We have not.
If today was the day that we had to have tested 20%, tomorrow I would be returning to remote.
Correct.
We're all in this together, and we all know what we need to do. I want to thank everybody who's on this call. I know it's a long night. It's Tuesday, better things to do, but there isn't for me. I want to thank Andrew from Horizon. I want to thank Cindy. Thank you for swabbing so gently. Thank you to everybody who sent in a question. If you're upset at me because I didn't answer your questions because they weren't about testing and vaccines, I apologize, but I don't. This was what I needed to talk about tonight. Ms. Brand will address those other questions in due time. I want to thank our nurses and all of our testing committee who've worked basically since November on our testing plan. They were incredible, all of them. They worked even, our nurses don't work over holiday break. Ours did. I want to thank them. I want to thank Rita, Linda, and Marmy. Thank you. I thank everybody who's been involved. I want to thank Dr. Teodor, as always, for making sure I stay in my lane and just keeping me focused on the task at hand. So as I say in every letter, as I say in every town hall, as I say in every conversation that I have with everybody over the past 10 blessed months, be safe and be well. Thank you.